Senate district here in Cuyahoga County. That represents the city of Cleveland, Shaker Heights, University Heights, Garfield Heights, Newburgh Heights, and I'm forgetting one of those, but a lot of the heights. Today, I'm glad you are joining me. We have a very special guest with us today, Director Kimberly Hall, who is the director of the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. Before I get started, I want to do what I always do and say thank you to all of the first responders who are out there. Thank you to all the medical personnel, police, fire, EMS, to all the restaurants and people in the restaurants who are feeding us on a regular basis, the grocery stores, and everybody that I might have missed, including volunteers. Today we have a very important guest, but what I do have with me are some very important people. My colleagues in the Ohio House of Representatives have decided to join me. So today I have Representative Upchurch, Representative Juanita Brent, Representative Janine Boyd, and coming on the line pretty soon will be Representative Howse. They're going to be joining me, but most importantly, Director Hall, I want to again thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know you have probably one of the most important departments in the state of Ohio right now as it relates to COVID-19. And I also want to take this time to personally thank you and all of your staff for working so closely with my staff, Kayla and Nevaeh, to handle the influx of calls that we've had about COVID-19, unemployment, and everything else. So what I want to do is turn this over to you to introduce yourself, say a few words, and just share with us exactly what your department does as it relates to COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Senator, and many thanks to the other members of the General Assembly that are joined today. It's really an honor to have this opportunity, and I'm deeply appreciative and certainly excited to be able to address your constituents in this more intimate way. So the Department of Job and Family Services is a very large agency, one of our largest agencies in the state, multiple billions of dollars in budget that really all go to supporting some of our Ohioans that are most in need, whether they be our children in the children's services system or those who are in need of publicly funded child care support, to those who need adult protective services, who rely on SNAP food assistance for supplementing with meals, who rely on TANF cash assistance, and certainly those who rely on our unemployment system and workforce development programs to help move forward, bridge gaps, and move them forward towards continued economic mobility and sustainability. During this really challenging time, we have had what we've been describing as the confluence of two events. So we had a public health event with the COVID pandemic and our need to respond from a public health standpoint with social distancing and other measures like that. But that public health event triggered an economic event that was very directly related to our need to temporarily shut down, engage in different practices. And so from the standpoint of JFS, we are certainly on the forefront in the response effort, but we will also be a partner going forward here in the recovery effort. We have our workforce development arm, which has for over a number of years been an arm in arm partner with entities like Jobs Ohio, for example, in rounding out, in our Department of Higher Education, in rounding out all of the supports for individuals who need to return to work and upskill. So we will be balancing this work for many months to come. There are predictions that even after we move out of our public health response to COVID, there will be downstream economic impacts that could last for upwards of a year or more. And so this agency will be a key partner in that role as well. And I'm blessed and honored to be in this leadership position. And it is the input of individuals like yourselves and the community that will need to drive how we can craft a recovery effort that is most responsive to what is needed in local communities. So thank you so much for this chance to address everyone live on Facebook.
Exactly. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. And I know the governor is probably so happy that he chose somebody who was ready to serve in a time of crisis. So I know we all just watch the press conference as we do every day. And we got a surprise that the legislature or the government is going to cut $200 million from the Medicaid budget. And that budget falls under your purview. Can you share with us right now who's going to be cut, what's going to be cut, and how you're going to handle this? Or is it too early for you to know where that $200 million is coming from? Because he said it was going to be effective as of today.
Yes, so the governor's announcements were very comprehensive and spoke to multiple agencies. In fact, a number of years ago, the Medicaid department was separated from the Department of Job and Family Services. So there is a director of Medicaid. It's a freestanding agency now. It was all a part of Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. So Director Maureen Corcoran is now the head of the Department of Medicaid. And so she would have many more details. And I know tomorrow, OBM Director Kim Murnix will be a special guest during the press conference and will go into more detail, very likely around certainly some of those larger budget cuts. And so what I would suggest is that we tune in there to hear more from Director Murnix, and then also for questions specific to the details around the Medicaid budget cuts, that the Department of Medicaid's resources would be the best position to answer those questions.
Excellent. All right, let's go right to the money, because that is what is so important to people right now. When you don't have a job and when you don't have the normal income coming in, what people rely on are those unemployment benefits. And as of Sunday, I know there were over 1 million people who applied for unemployment benefits. During last week's press conference, Lieutenant Governor Howse said that there were approximately 500,000 people who had already started receiving checks. That would mean that there are about 500,000 people who have already applied who still have not received any money since they have been laid off because of COVID-19. Can you give us an update as to who has received their money so far and who is left to serve, and when those individuals might get their funding?
Thanks, happy to do that. So we have so far issued, and the numbers rise every day, $1.8 billion in funding out to Ohioans across the state, to nearly 526,000 claimants. And so we have received over 1 million claims. The actual unduplicated count number, however, is closer to 950,000 or so, because some people filed out of frustration multiple claims. So when we pull down the scaled down number, we're at about 950,000. I think it's important to understand how those claims are being broken down and processed. So for example, we have adjudicated and resolved over 86% of all claims that have been filed, meaning they've been either approved, denied because an individual may not have been eligible, or they have been withdrawn, or they are still pending. So when you hear the number of 526,000 currently receiving benefits, we then need to go from that number into how many of those claims were denied, how many remained pending. So we still have a delta there of about a little less than 130,000 that are pending, but over 240 some thousand have been denied. Another 5,000 have been withdrawn. So it's not apples to apples in terms of, if there are 500,000 being paid, another 500,000 must still be waiting. The number of those who need an answer, essentially, from the Department of Job and Family Services is close to that 140,000 number.
Okay. Now, a lot of people have reached out to my office and said they're still getting delays. They're still being hung up on by the computer system when they're calling, no matter what time of day. We've been telling people to get on the phone early in the morning before everybody else wakes up, so that you can be one of the first people on to help them get through the system. Now, I know the Lieutenant Governor, and I saw you also tell people that you guys were going to be hiring, about 1,000 people or so, to deal with the influx of applications that you have. Have you hired all of the people you plan on hiring? And if you have not, what is your plan to process these additional applications?
So we are, yes, we are scaling every day. We're at close to 1,600 individuals that are exclusively dedicated to our call center. A number of them are state employees from other agencies who have been redeployed by virtue of the fact that they're working from home now and maybe not able to do what they typically have been able to do in day-to-day work in their state offices. We have deployed them as well. So we have BWC teams from ODOT, et cetera. Then we also have contracted call center support from our partners at Deloitte, our partners at Amazon Web Services. There's an affiliate, it's called Distance Interaction Services as a call center. We also just let out another RFQ for additional call center support. So day over day, we're scaling with our full-time call center agents. I have to say, I'm deeply sorry about the challenges that individuals are experiencing as they're trying to get through. Online filing is not a challenge for the most part. We've had 96% of claims being filed, over 90% of claims being filed online. It is just when you have issues of questions about that claim once it's filed, and then being able to come all the way through to an agent. We had an estimation that in order to meet the upwards of 500,000 calls that come into our call center every day, we would need to find the funding to scale up to close to 4,000 agents on the phone. We know that with state revenue and what we have available to us, that isn't reasonable. So we've partnered with Amazon Web Service, national leader, as we all know, in the call center and technology space, to help us leverage scaling up with agents, but also automated technology that make self-service possible. We are going to have to couple technology with real people on the phone. So we have made some improvements that over the past week, we launched, week before last, we launched Amazon Web Service as a cloud-based automated system to help with the phones. So every call should be coming through, no calls dropped. Every call should be coming through. It may be a situation where an individual is coursed through because of the amount of volume. They may be routed to an automated chat bot or using automated technology. But we have reached a point where calls are not being dropped. The challenge for us that we continue to work on every day is trying to get as many people who feel they need to talk to a real person connected to a real person. And that is a matter of scaling up every day. There are some very simple errors that occur with filing claims that need to be corrected. And then there are some very complex cases that we know that absolutely require an individual to talk to. And so we're coupling scaling up with those agents with technology. Every state is doing the same thing and applying the same approach, because the sheer volume over the course of a 6-week period of time has exceeded really what we've experienced even in the past 2 years. So that is our focus day and night. I understand people who are eligible want their money, and they're going to get it. And we're going to work as hard as we can to make that happen.
Okay, now we know from the news reports that our computer systems at ODGFS may be outdated. I believe Houston said that 2004 is when we built this infrastructure, which of course is outdated, but of course government does not buy systems as fast as they used to. So I know that is a problem, but I want to get to a bigger question. The $600 extra a week for people who are receiving unemployment. We had some calls last week from people who received their first $600 increase, but it was just for that particular week. It didn't go back to the entire month that they were actually off of work. So will they be receiving the $600 from the day they started their unemployment claims moving forward, or is it just from the last week going forward?
The $600 a week payment, the PUC payment, Pandemic Unemployment Compensation payment that is funded at the federal level, is retroactive. So I'll be sure to follow up on dynamics where an individual may only be seeing the most immediate week. But when you look at the breakdown of how much has gone out, we issued just a tremendous amount of retroactive payments in that first week of deployment. And so the $600 a week goes back to the first date, the first week that an individual was eligible. But I will follow up on that.
Director, before I turn this over to Representative Upchurch, I'm wondering, do we have enough money to pay all these claims? I mean, you mentioned $1.8 billion already. When we had the last recession with Governor Strickland, we ended up having to borrow money from the federal government to pay all of the unemployment claims, and they were nowhere near what you're dealing with right now. So do you know whether or not we have those dollars and whether or not we are looking at the federal government for some assistance?
So we know that the totality of unemployment compensation that is flowing out is actually sourced in two ways. One, from federal funds. The $600 a week is entirely funded at the federal level. So that is not tapping into our unemployment trust fund. Okay. The base amount of unemployment is what is paid through the state's account. And so that number is drawing down. We do expect to likely exhaust what we have in the fund by very early June, and every state pretty much is in a very similar position. And then the options now, and we know Congress is exploring how to support the states in this way, but the options now are to undertake, in the same way we did during the recession, the loan opportunity from the government to help there. And then we also know that the legislature here in Ohio has our unemployment system and our trust fund in its sights in the future, in terms of how we calibrate the amounts and the amount that is pulled in, so that we avoid this challenge in the future.
Well, I can tell you that the legislature will be working hard over the next couple of months to deal with these issues and the potential cuts in the next year of our biennial. So we look forward to working with you on that. Right now, of course, I have a lot of other questions to ask, but I'm going to turn this over to Representative Upchurch to get his question.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Director. Thank you for all the work that you do. You're doing a fantastic job. I want to say hello to my colleagues. I hope you are safe and well. A lot of the questions that I had, you pretty much answered. They were similar to the questions that the Senator asked, more so systematic. But I will say, I will ask rather, are you prepared for this long term? Because, obviously once we transition out of this, once businesses start to open, I can see that we'll still continue to have the large amount of unemployment claims and people looking for those benefits. So, and you touched on some of the things that you've been doing to kind of cope with a lot of the inquiries that you've been having. But I foresee that those numbers are going to continue, and they may even increase as businesses open and things kind of go back to normal.
Thank you. Yes. So all of the foundational elements that we had to very rapidly work to stand up will continue to be in place. So the Amazon web system, the additional scaling with the now we will have, certainly by the end of the week, 3 call center contracts out to help manage the phones, in addition to the state employees that we have on the line. So and then the new system we had to build to issue the $600 payments and to handle 1099 employees. All of those things were foundational items that we did not have previously that we're building now. So certainly, absolutely, my expectation is going forward, we will be able, with every day that passes, to respond even better to the demands going forward. We don't know the rate at which people will become reemployed. We know that that is our target, and we want everyone to get back into the workforce as soon as possible. That may not happen. The economy may be a little bit more sluggish in returning. And so we are preparing to continue to be supportive on that side, especially our workforce development side of the agency.
Thank you, Director.
Representative Brent.
Hi, thank you so much, Senator, for including me and my other colleagues in this. Thank you, Director Hall, for just speaking to all of our constituents with what's going on at ODGFS. My question is one that came from one of my constituents, and it was regarding people who at one time received an overpayment for their unemployment in a previous case some years ago, and now that they need unemployment now, there seems to be a holdup. What is a procedure of people who need unemployment now but received overpayments in the past?
So overpayments are a challenge, as well as penalty weeks. You may have heard about penalty weeks as well. Those are typically scenarios where there's some indication of a need to recoup dollars that were inappropriately issued because of eligibility challenges and all of that. We are learning from the federal government that the PUA system, so the opportunity that is available for those who are self-employed, 1099 filers, and those who did not meet the typical requirements applicable for regular unemployment, could still file under the PUA program, which is the federal program that is preparing to launch. We had a pre-registration period that opens and actually closes today around 10 p.m. Individuals will not be barred from continuing to apply. We just need to shut it down for a minute so that we can get the data transferred into the full system. But those individuals serving penalty weeks could have that opportunity. I don't believe with overpayments, though, that the person will be eligible until that time frame has lapsed as well. But I'll get clarification on that. But we do know that those who have penalty weeks and haven't been able to file and aren't eligible under traditional unemployment will be able to file to receive benefits under the PUA program.
Thank you so much, Director.
So just for clarity, if you have back payments that you need to catch up, that has to be taken care of first. And is child support taking out of unemployment checks as well?
Yes, so this was a consideration at the federal level, and Congress did not waive the child support obligation as it pertains to offsetting whether it's the $600 a week payment or the base unemployment.
Okay.
That is not that's a federal requirement that we could not waive at the state level.
Okay, so if you owe money or if you owe child support, your check is going to be cut so that people are clear. I'm going to now ask Representative Boyd to jump in with her question.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Williams, for bringing us together again, your House members. And thank you, Director Hall, for taking the time out of your enormously busy schedule now, especially to answer questions for us and help us put the minds of our constituents at as much ease as we can. And hope everyone is doing well in your families. So I have a tougher question. It's you've probably feel like you've been talking about it now for about 24, 48 hours nonstop. But there is a lot of just alarm. And so I want to try to help, again, put constituents' minds at ease as much as possible. You know, we're going now through the process of slowly reopening non-essential businesses in the midst of very uncertain and deadly, certainly deadly, but uncertain pandemic. And, you know, in a situation where sometimes symptoms don't show themselves for weeks, and also that we're learning every day new symptoms. So having said that, we all understand that a letter went out to employers from JFS that just requested that as soon as an employee refuses to return to work because they're afraid of conditions or whatever their fears might be, that that employer alert JFS as soon as possible so that their eligibility could be reassessed. And so if you could just speak to, first of all, that letter that went out, and if you could speak to sort of your eligibility redetermination process in a pandemic, in this pandemic, and just try to help us give people some, feel a little bit better about what's been out there about this issue. Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And I'd like to make sure that you get a copy of what went out, because I think that's really important. So you can actually see the text of what the language was that JFS shared. We absolutely know that we are in a delicate time as we reopen the economy, and then also encourage individuals to stay safe. And so what the email indicated was, and this was in response to questions from employers, the email basically highlighted a process that was already in place within our unemployment office around what happens when an employee refuses to work. So this process has been in place for a number of years. This is not a new thing that was created as a result of the pandemic. And the email absolutely did not say that employers needed to report individuals who were citing that they were fearful or what have you. What we encouraged was a dialogue between employers and employees, where the employers would share with their employees that first and foremost, the steps that they are taking in accordance with the stay-at-home order to ensure that health and safety standards are met. So making sure employees know as they're being called back to work what the employer commitment is going to be in that regard. If they continue to have concerns about what they're experiencing, the proper place is not ODJFS. We're not policing an employer's response in that regard. They should go to their local health districts if there is a concern around what they're experiencing. The very narrow aspect of this that is within the scope of Job and Family Services is the fact that we're obligated to ensure that those who receive benefits are actually eligible to receive it, as that term is defined in the law. And a person who is eligible is one who is unemployed by virtue of no fault of their own, right? And so the good cause refusal to work provision has always been in place as a mechanism through which an employee would be able to share and show the good cause reason why they decided that they would refuse an offer to work, as a way to explain why they needed to continue to be eligible for unemployment benefits. So in the letter, we certainly emphasize the need for dialogue between the employer and employee first and foremost, emphasize the need for employees to understand that the Department of Health and the local health districts really can be helpful in helping them navigate their concerns about an environment. And if an employer reached a point where they had, after attempting to work things out with employees, a situation where you have employees that are refusing to return to work, but yet that employer is still paying those unemployment benefits, that's when the employer would have the resource available and the need to contact us, because we're flowing that funding out of the fund that the employer's paid into. They would need to contact us to begin a process through which we would reach out to the employer and the employee to understand it's an 119 administrative process where we would give due process to both parties involved, give an opportunity to hear both sides of the story, and then there would be an appeal right depending on the determination. I just want to share quickly with you the fact that on the website, there will be specific guidelines for moving through the process around the return to work, good cause refusal to return to work process. Essentially, it centers around whether there's good cause to refuse an offer of suitable work. And one of the factors is health and safety issues and standards. Historically, like I said, this process has been in place. So there are things that are other factors like travel distance, the changes in shift hours and things like that. That's probably less significant in the COVID space. It will be the health and safety avenue that many likely will be interested in. And so those guidelines will be available, but we just have to emphasize first and foremost, this is not a new process. It is not designed to be a punitive process in any way. And the obligation does rest with our employers to ensure that they are taking the steps that they need to establish a healthy and safe work environment for their employees.
Thank you so much, Director, for answering that question. Before we go to Representative Howse, I just wanted to follow up a little bit. Number one, when we first started this pandemic, I received a lot of pictures from people inside of their essential business, from employees who were showing me that their employers were not actually following the governor's executive orders. So I know I had people reaching out to the Department of Health. Today we said they could reach out to the State Department of Health, but I just want to make sure that the employees, the people who are working every day, are safe. So if anybody is being put in a dangerous situation, I want you all to feel free, because most people think if I tell, I'm going to lose my job. That's what I've been getting from a lot of people. But if you're being put in harm's way, please let one of us legislators on the phone know, and we can also follow the protocol with the state or the local authorities. But even then, when the health department comes in to look, of course, the owners know they're coming. So then they're going to separate these people and do what they need to do. So I want to make sure people know if you're being mistreated or they're not following the rules, us legislators, as well as the other officials, are here to help you. Is Representative Howse on the call yet?
I'm here.
Okay, Representative Howse, you have your question up.
Hi, good afternoon, Director Hall and everyone. I had a quick question regarding the Step Up to Quality program. And if you can just share with us, what is the status in our child care providers being able to make the deadline, the upcoming deadline? And I have some follow up from there too.
Thank you. So right now with Step Up, we were in a position, as you know, to have the need to be responsive to the July 1, 2020 deadline for all child care programs that receive state funding to participate in the Step Up to Quality program. That deadline has been extended to September 1, 2020. So to give our child care centers additional time. I will say, even prior to this extension though, we were already in March at 91% of programs that receive state funding participating in Step Up to Quality. So we only had a delta. We were really close in March. We only had a delta of another 9% to get us there. But yes, we're at September 1, 2020. The governor will and has certainly committed, and I've been involved in these conversations, and they are rapidly unfolding. The governor will be in a position to share the state's response and perspectives around childcare very soon. He has formed a roundtable of entities and providers to help make the best recommendations as we think about reopening. And then also, as you know, we have our pandemic child care centers right now that are open. They are serving about 24,000 children across the state. So about 2,200 centers are open, serving 24,000 children right now. We know child care is critical. It's a workforce development driver. Certainly, it's a workforce driver. You can't go to work if you can't have anywhere to send your child in a quality setting. And so child care announcement will be coming soon.
And with that, Director, just can you give us an update of just the employees of ODJFS, right? So we know many of them have been working overtime, triple time to meet the demanding need for Ohioans, and many of them are actually parents themselves who may not have childcare options. So can you kind of explain to us kind of what the department has been doing to support just their own workforce?
Yes, thank you for that. I'm really proud of the entire team. I call them Team ODJFS. They think it's corny, but I like it. So we have about 2,300 employees right now in the agency, give or take, and they're all just doing a tremendous job. Certainly across our unemployment office, they deserve a huge shout out. They're doing mandatory overtime right now. They are on the phones 12 hours a day during the week, and then 9 to 5 on Saturday, 9 to 1 on Sunday. They have been all in throughout this effort, very committed, and I can't be more proud of them. It is a challenge. We have individuals who we're doing all of that from home. So no one is in our agency offices right now. Everyone is on the phones and all of that from home. And so we recognize that there's a challenge as parents, as you navigate, school is still in, et cetera. And so we are trying to ensure that we're being as flexible as possible with the schedules, but we're working, our primary focus is meeting the demand right now for our services across the state.
Well, thank you for that.
Well, Director, I have another question before we begin to close down. And these are our 1099 self-employed workers. These workers have been on the phone with us for a very long time. They were a little confused because they didn't really know and understand the difference between a traditional employee as well as their own unemployment benefits, or how they could get to their unemployment benefits. Can you please share with us the difference between traditional unemployment benefits and the 1099 self-employed subcontractors or contractors, and how those two differ, so that people will understand why, when they apply for unemployment benefits from the traditional standpoint, they're being denied, and let us also know what they can do going forward.
Thank you. So traditional unemployment is an insurance program that employers across the state pay into. And so those are W-2 employees, I'll just call them. Those who have been working at least 20 hours a week, have been receiving $269 a week at least over the past 20 weeks with an employer, and they are W-2 employees. Those employers are paying into the unemployment system. So that is traditional unemployment. There are requirements there under state law, and that is that funding that comes from those employers that pay in is what stacks up our solvency, our trust fund, our unemployment trust fund month over month. And so then 1099 employees are your consultants, independent contractors, et cetera. We know that barbers, hairstylists, et cetera, are in that category. That is where the federal government really worked hard to establish this PUA program, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, as a way to kind of catch those who just aren't eligible under federal and state law for traditional unemployment. So they really worked hard to grab as many people as they could and stand up programs that could support them. So we have state funding and an existing program in traditional unemployment. And we have had to launch and build over these past weeks a brand new program to help those who previously weren't eligible. Stylists, barbers, other self-employed individuals never were eligible for unemployment until this point in time. So we had a pre-registration process that launched close to 10 days ago. And we've had so far almost well over 185,000 individuals pre-register who are in that category of self-employed or 1099 employees. So that was step one in the process. And then step two will be the opportunity, now that they have their credentials, their account, et cetera. Step two will be the opportunity for them to go in, upload their paperwork, and move forward in the application process. Deloitte has been our partner in rapidly building the system that will handle that phase two process. So we did phase one, opened it up, and we now know we have over 185,000 pre-registered to go. They will get a notification as soon as the system goes live, which will be very soon. And then they will be able to log back on and complete the paperwork and move forward. The payments there, again, are retroactive as well. So they'd get a base unemployment payment plus the $600 per week.
So Director, just to follow up, how are you going to base their unemployment weekly compensation since they don't have a salary for you all to go back and look at?
So there are, that's a great question. They still file taxes. And so we're basing it on 2019 taxes. It's kind of a complex formula, but basically you take one of the quarters and annualize that into an income amount. And then that amount will really mirror essentially what a traditional UI recipient would get. So we're not setting up different payment schedules. It's based upon their tax filing from 2019. That translates into an annualized income level, a weekly income level through a calculation. And so they would receive a base payment amount that looks very similar to what a traditional UI recipient would receive, plus the $600.
Excellent. Okay, I know we are out of time right now. Does anybody have any closing remarks before I turn it over to the director for a closing remark?
Yes, just wanted to say, I know there were several people who submitted questions online, and the wonderful team of Senator Williams has been answering those questions. So if you have a question that was not answered, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of our offices and we will respond back to you. That's what we're here for. And Kayla has been doing a really wonderful job responding to.
Thank you, Representative Howse, for reminding me to do that. I always give out my telephone number as well as my email address, and Kayla will put that information on the website. Kelly and Millie and Rachel, thank you all for doing that. They will upload all of our email addresses for our offices as well as our telephone numbers if people want to reach out, but we will try to answer your questions before or after we get off this call. My office number is 614-466-4857. That will be on the website as well as williams@ohiosenate.org. Each of us work very hard every day to make sure you have everything that you need. And we're going to make sure you actually get through this pandemic working with us and the director. And we're going to work as hard as we can until everybody is satisfied. Director, would you like to have some closing comments?
Thank you. You captured it really eloquently. We are continuing to focus on all of those who still need to be resolved, whose claims still need to be resolved, who are still trying to get through on the phone. That is the priority, certainly. I have some follow-up items from this evening to check on retroactive $600 payments, whether or not someone who has overpayments is eligible for PUA. And I'll be sure to send the email out that went out to employees around return to work. So I just thank everyone so much for the support and encouragement. We are feeling the love, but we know that there's also a little bit of continued challenge that we have to work through. So just keep pushing us, and we intend to deliver.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it so much. And to those of you who did not get their question answered, reach out to our offices and we will make sure we follow up with the director's staff to get your situation taken care of. To everybody who's watching, thank you all so much. To my colleagues, I love you all from the House of Representatives, and I will see you all in Columbus tomorrow. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Stay safe.